I know, looking back as an adult, it must have been so hard for him to have a son that was transsexual. I can understand it now. Well, he got through the summer, and it was in September of 2004. He went to a rehabilitation hospital, and then he was sent home. And you know, I was always checking in the whole summer, and I kept thinking, oh my God, if he dies, like, I never had that connection, like, it never happened. And I had always, like, prayed that we would have, like, that, it would come, things would come full circle, and there'd be some sort of, like, connection. Well, I was calling home, and he started wanting to get on the phone with me, like, wanting to talk to me. And I couldn't believe it. The things my father was saying to me. And in November, he said to me, it was around Thanksgiving, he started crying. And I had only seen my father cry one time when my grandmother died and his mother died. And he started crying on the phone to me, and he says, you know what? I don't care. He says, it is what it is. You're my child and I love you. And I was so emotional, and actually I was taken aback because, you know, when you're not used to getting that love expressed, it just was so, it was odd to me, you know. But I was happy. I was happy that I was getting it. Well, the beginning of November, we were on another phone call, and he said to me, he says, you know, you've been gone too long. I want to see you. Well, I got scared. We were finally connecting and having that love union that I wanted, and I decided not to go. I stayed away out of love because I didn't know if he could truly accept me in the physical. It's one thing to see pictures, but I just felt like if I went home, I might mess things up. So I stayed away out of love. And he said to me, he says, you know, I worked so hard my whole life. He says, who do you think I worked for? He said, I worked for you and your sister. And he said to me, he says, I just worry about you so much. And he says, I want you to be okay. He says, people can be so cruel. And he says, me and your mom won't be around all this. And I didn't want to hear it. I said, I know. And I just kind of, blew it off. Well, on the 23rd of December, 2004, Dad passed away. And that time for me was such a difficult time because I had to make the decision not to go home knowing that he was sick. But I did it out of love because we were finally getting on so well and connecting. I just felt like he might not be able to handle it. I was so thankful that at least I had that connection before he passed away, because I think that helped me to deal with his passing, and I do feel that we did come full circle. I sit here crying in front of you all, but this isn't a pity party. No, it's not a pity party. These are tears of triumph. Tears of triumph. I have been through so much, and despite all the hardship that I've been through in my life, there's nothing like being true to who you are, living your authentic self. There is an absolute freedom in that. So these are tears of triumph. I have gone through my life, and as I've lived my life, I have evolved in so many different ways, spiritually especially. And I know that we're all born with these brains that are the PCs to these wonderful minds that we have that can create the life that we want. Anything it is that we want. I also know that you attract what you focus on. So I've chosen to focus on the blessings in my life, on the good in my life. I want to open up the floor to any questions. And I'm going to tell you there's nothing off limits. Because if you have a question and you don't know the answer, the only way to know the answer is to ask it. So please feel free. Don't be scared, I don't bite. Unless you want me to.
I have a question.
Sure.
Did you share about housing too? Your housing?
Yeah, I mentioned housing, but what I'll tell you, recently I had to leave where I was staying. And I had to look for another apartment. Well, you know, you have to go through these realtors and you have to go through these landlords, and that was a bit of a fiasco for me because, you know, you show up on the phone, he's hearing my voice, or she's hearing my voice, and then I show up, and then it's like, oh, the place isn't available anymore. Like mysteriously, like within, you know, a matter of an hour or two, it's now gone. We also have to be very careful about where we live because, you know, you're thinking about the dynamics of the neighborhood. You know, me personally, I don't like to live in apartment buildings because I feel like I'd be too much under a microscope. So I tend to like go towards cottages behind houses where they're real private and you're just dealing with like the family in the front type thing. That works for me. But it can be a challenge.
Where did you grow up first?
I grew up in Philadelphia. Yeah, I was born in Brooklyn and I grew up in Philly. Yeah, and my mom is still there in the family home that we grew up in. Yeah.
Where do you work now?
I'm sorry.
Where do you work now?
Actually, right now I am unemployed. I was working for American Express for 6 years. And I was laid off when they did like in the fall, spring of last year, they did like a big downsizing, and I was laid off. That was a challenge. I mean, when I started working at American Express and different places, I mean, I've had like a work history, thank God, but it's dealing with the bathroom issue. I mean, that was a big thing when I started working there. They didn't want me to use the ladies' room because they said, oh, I may be offensive to the ladies. And then, of course, they didn't want me using the men's room because they said because of my safety. So there were bathroom issues. The employees weren't particularly friendly in the beginning. You know, I had to make a web. But I survived it, I proved myself, and I was able to be there 6 years. And then, like I said recently, I got laid off. So, yeah, the job search is difficult too because, again, how many places do you go that you see transsexuals working? You know, it's a challenge.
What do you think the hardest thing is that you face on a daily basis, like just a regular?
The hardest way?
What is the hardest thing that you face on a daily basis? On
a daily basis, I would say sometimes just going out. Because, you know, like because of our group being a relatively small group, we're a small population compared to the planet. You figure if there's 6.5 billion people, maybe what, 200,000 transgenders? So, you know, that's like a drop in the bucket. And what happens is oftentimes you're the only transsexual at the post office. You're the only transsexual in the supermarket. So you tend to stand out, especially if you're not like completely passable, then you tend to stand out. But I'll tell you, there's something to that too. I have a girlfriend that's very passable and people don't know. But her dilemma is when she meets a guy, telling him, like, is he gonna still like me after I tell him? With me, it's like if they approach me, well, 9 out of 10, they know, you know, what's the deal. So you know, it has its pros and cons. But I would say just going out and like, I'll pull up to a store sometime and I'll have to look around, like I'll park and I'll kind of get like I'll assess the vibe of the area before I just hop out. You know, just taking the precaution. And especially after being beaten up, I have that recall sometimes. So.
Is that here or was that in Philadelphia?
It was here. It was here in South Florida. Yeah.
You You said while you were embracing who you are, you started dressing differently, and then you started taking hormones, and then you said you took the final leap. What does that mean, final leap?
Oh, the final leap. You want to know? You want to know whether I'm pre-op or post-op? Well, I'll tell you. I'll say it like this. I have the features of my mother and the pictures of my father. No, I haven't had the full surgery yet. I probably will end up being a non-op. There's transsexuals that are okay living as the other gender, but they just don't have the full, complete surgery. Yeah. Because even if I won $1 million tomorrow, I don't know. I'd really have to like think it over. It's a lot to do to your body, and right now this is my comfort zone. So that could change, you know. But for now, I'm happy. Yeah.
I have a lot of friends that are female to male, and I find that for them it's very much is a financial issue. Do you find that before you have the surgery, isn't there amount of time that you have to see a therapist and kind of get permission for that? And then of course it is very expensive, which is why a lot of FTMs I know have had top surgery but not gone all the way because that, as I'm saying, it's even more expensive. So, and I think that's a factor. Like you can decide that you want to be something and be true to yourself, but then where is the $100,000 going to come from?
Exactly. Yeah, the finances definitely come into it because you have to have the money to have the surgery. And then also, like I said, it is major surgery, so you want to also feel comfortable with going through that because every surgery is a risk. I mean, if you go under anesthesia, you're taking a risk. And then also, some girls are happy with being 2-in-1. You know, you just get comfortable. It's always been there, so you just kind of like get comfortable with it. But I tell you, if I had a genie that could wave her magic wand, I don't know. I might tell her to go ahead and do it. You know. So, any other questions?
Do you go home now?
Can I what?
Do you go home now?
Yeah, actually, I went home for my dad's funeral. And I have to say, I was well received. You know, there's still some family members that have their issues with it, but in general, most of my family has accepted me. And the thing is, you know, like a lot of my families tell me, you still have the same spirit. Because see, what you're doing as transgender is it starts inside. All you're doing is you're trying your best to match your inside with your outside. Well, I should say match your outside with your inside. You know, you try your best to do that. But I've had the same spirit from a little child, and they recognize that I'm still, you know, the same person. Just to look a little different. Any other questions? And then I'll go to you.
I know obviously that you are American, but just based on your name, I'm wondering if there were any cultural implications for you changing gender?
Yeah, well, my father was East Indian, and that's what my name is East Indian. You know, ironically, in East Indian culture, if you all are familiar with the gods and the goddesses, a lot of the male gods, they're very unisex and female looking. There's a spirituality about it. And there's certain parts of India where someone like myself is actually respected and they look at it as like a special thing. You know, gosh, this person's 2-in-1, they're special. You know, they're not defective. You know, it's all relative to how you look at things. Thailand is another place. Maui, another place. Where transsexuals are relatively accepted. But my dad was East Indian, but he was from the island of Trinidad. My grandparents had immigrated. So he had a mixture of the East Indian and the West Indian, which kind of brought another dynamic into it. And the whole thing of, you know, the macho, you know, he was the type when he came home, you know, the food could be on the stove, but he wanted my mom to serve it. And, you know, that kind of thing. So, yeah, I would say he was uncomfortable with it. To an extent for most of his life, but then towards the end, they did come to terms with it, you know. You had a question?
Do you date heterosexual men or?
I do, heterosexual.